the global economy. And any company that does business with Syria will no longer have access to the global economy. This legislation is clear. It is very simple, that no company should be allowed to put their profits before our national security. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest an absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of the motion to proceed H.J. Res. 66, which clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to the consideration of H.J. Res. 66, a joint resolution approving renewal of import restrictions contained in the Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act of 2003.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak about the need to have a disaster assistance effort to support those in New York, your state, as well as across the country, and the tremendous needs that we have today as a result of what has happened regarding the weather. This year we've seen a terrible string of natural disasters that have shut down businesses, farms, have left families homeless all across our country. And as chair of the Agriculture Committee, I am particularly focused, of course, on what has happened to our farmers in America. I'm concerned about the flooding along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, the record droughts that have devastated the livelihoods of men and women who grow our food all across America. Earlier this year, we had the worst droughts in recorded history in Oklahoma, with about $1.6 billion in crop losses. In Kansas, I've had the opportunity, and my staff has, to join with my ranking member, my colleague, Senator Roberts, in talking with folks and having a chance to see the fact that the droughts have wiped out about $2 billion in crops. Floods in the Mississippi River Valley washed over 3 million acres of farmland. Hurricane Irene destroyed more than 450,000 acres of cotton and 300,000 acres of corn in North Carolina. In New York, we have seen similar damage to corn, soybeans, alfalfa, fruits, and vegetables. And in Vermont, crop losses are estimated at more than $5 million. So all across our country, we have serious challenges that are creating hardships for our businesses, our farmers, and our families. And we need to respond. That is our responsibility. Now, right now, the droughts are worst in Texas, where the damage is also in the billions of dollars, and we have more than 1,000 homes that have been lost. Already this year, there have been natural disasters in 48 of our states. 48 out of 50 states have had natural disasters. Michigan, thank goodness, is one of the 2 states that has not been affected by the weather. But throughout our nation's history, when men and women in one part of the country are hit with a natural disaster, all of America comes together to support them and to help rebuild. And that's really what this effort is about, is coming together as Americans. That's who we are as Americans. We stand with each other in times of trouble. This is not the time to play politics, Madam President. Not when hundreds of thousands of families, farmers, businesses have been devastated by an unprecedented string of floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, and other natural disasters. Already, FEMA has had to halt rebuilding efforts in 41 states. So they've now had to halt rebuilding efforts in 41 states. So it is critical that we get this done. This legislation in front of us needs to pass, and it needs to pass quickly. But I also want to tell you now about another emergency that has taken place in my state and in too many other states. It's called a jobs emergency. We may not have been affected by the natural disasters of the weather, but as we look over the last decade in a global economy, as the economy has changed, we have been through the same kinds of devastations over a longer period of time, but our people are affected as much as any other state disaster. We have 14 million people out of work in this country. 14 million people out of work. We have a huge national deficit. We will never get out of debt with more than 14 million people out of work. We have to make smart decisions on cutting things that aren't important, and we have to grow. We have to create jobs for people and support the private sector efforts to create jobs. And for each and every one of those families, their job search is an emergency. It's an emergency every time they think about how to put food on the table. It's an emergency every month when they have to scrape together money for the rent or the mortgage. It's an emergency every minute of every day when those men and women are filling out applications, going to job fairs, trying their best to get back to work. So, Madam President, I find in the middle of all of this, in the middle of support for all that is going around in the country in terms of natural disasters, it extremely concerning and, in fact, outrageous to me that the House Republicans have proposed a job-killing offset to pay for the help that's critically needed for natural disasters that would pull the rug out of businesses and families all across our country and put it up to 50,000 American jobs at risk. That's what they are proposing. And I absolutely oppose this. They propose paying for this critical disaster bill by taking dollars out of a very successful advanced manufacturing retooling program that we passed in the 2007 energy bill. And it took a while to get it up and going. The previous administration never administered it. I want to thank the Obama administration for coming in 2009 and beginning the process of putting it together and all the rules that it took and so on. And so it took a while to get up and going. It has not moved as fast as I would like at all. But thank goodness the Obama administration saw it as a priority and has moved forward to put it in place. So what has happened already? Well, these retooling loans have meant 41,000 jobs in Tennessee, California, Indiana, Michigan, Delaware, Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, and Missouri. These retooling loans have helped companies retool older manufacturing plants to build the products of the future here in America, rather than shipping those jobs overseas. And it's been, as I said, extremely successful. In Michigan, retooling loans made it possible for Ford Motor Company to save 1,900 jobs at the Michigan Assembly Plant in the city of Wayne so they could build the all-new Ford Focus and the battery electric Focus in America. And in the process of that, as we partnered with them on battery funding as well. In the process of that, with the help of these retooling loans, they are bringing jobs back from Mexico to support the work that they're doing on the new vehicles. Madam President, I don't know how many economic development efforts we can stand on the floor today and talk about in the United States Senate or House that are actually bringing jobs back from overseas. And this is the program that the House Republicans want to cut. This loan, and it is a loan, so it has to be repaid, but it is allowing them to be able to have lower costs, to be able to do the retooling on these older plants, to be able to make these new high-tech vehicles, and as I said, in Ford Motor Company's case, they have saved 1,900 jobs and are bringing jobs back from Mexico. Another Michigan company, Silverstall North America, was able to secure a retooling loan to retool an old steel mill, the Rouge Steel Mill in Michigan, into a cutting-edge plant building advanced high-strength steels for automotive production. Jobs here. And that doesn't count what's happening in states across America. That alone, along with private loans and a $1 billion investment from the company, will help create over 2,500 construction jobs and will bring the total number of permanent manufacturing jobs at that plant, again, to 1,900. Pretty good investment on a loan that's going to be paid back while creating jobs. These are the kinds of things that we need to be doing. We need to be doing to address the jobs emergency that Michigan and states all across the country are feeling and have been feeling. Right now, there are 35,000 to 1,000 jobs at stake in this proposal by the House Republicans. We have other companies that want to use the retooling loans to make things in America, in Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Louisiana, and Florida. These loans are expected to be approved in the next few months. They're very, very close. And we would see 35,000 to 40,000 jobs disappear. The opportunity for those jobs disappear if we were to accept the House proposal. In the next round of manufacturing retooling loans after that, we could see another 10,000 jobs created across the country. If these retooling loans don't happen, those jobs will not happen either. To add insult to injury, these companies have been working closely with the Department of Energy, in some cases for several years, in order to qualify for these loans. They've had to undergo the most rigorous screening to make sure the products and companies are in sound financial shape, as they should. We need to make sure that they are going through rigorous screening and that so they can be successful, but to make sure that we are making products here in America. It's an important project and partnership. These companies have invested countless hours and, frankly, a lot of money to get these projects off the ground and to get to this point. And as I indicated, we have a number of companies in states around the country where they were within a month or 2 months or 3 months from being able to complete the deal and create the jobs. They're this close. And the rug will be pulled out from under not only the companies, but the communities, the families that are affected. These businesses are America's job creators. They are doing the right thing. They want to invest in America, while others have been on the sidelines waiting. They've jumped in. They are committed to creating jobs. They want to make things here. And they have moved through a process, spent time, money, tremendous amount of time. In fact, in my judgment, it has not moved as fast as it should, but they're now at a point to actually make it happen. And I am outraged that we would see an effort to end the creation of these jobs. There is no question, as I said, Madam President, that we have a series of natural disasters and families, businesses, farmers affected across this country. And even though those natural disasters, fortunately for us, did not come to Michigan, I support the effort to address this. We are all in this as Americans. But I will not support an effort that in the process takes tens of thousands of jobs away. Because the crisis for Michigan is a jobs crisis. We were the first ones in it. We've been in it the longest. We're coming out of it now, but we're coming out of it slowly, way too slowly, and we're coming out of it because we have been creating partnerships to support the private sector to make things in America again. And so I strongly urge everyone involved not to come forward with something that will, in fact, jeopardize these jobs. It makes absolutely no sense to me, and it is certainly something that I will strongly oppose if it does. Thank you, Madam President.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.